Welcome to Unit 7, From Illness to Skills, A New Perspective. This is the 7th unit of Promoting Competitive Employment, a training program for certified peer specialists. In this unit, we're going to discuss the idea of skills and the goal of keeping what we get, which of course is exactly what we want to do. When we say, I want to get a job, are we saying that we want to get hired into a job, or that we want to have a successful experience in our job and feel satisfied about what we're doing there? Of course, it's the latter. We want to be able to keep the job once we get it. Keeping is something that we can support people by reframing our view from illness to skills. And it's about the idea of changing our framework from thinking that because of illness and biological brain disorders or whatever, that people have an unavoidable large list of can'ts that they just have to be resigned to, and instead really recognize that the majority of difficulties that people experience come from a lack of opportunities in their lives as a result of having the emergence of a psychiatric condition at some point in their life. If we think about how many people tend to be diagnosed between 16 and 25 years old, it's really amazing. And these are such critical years in human development. These are the years when we learn, through a lot of trial and frequently error, how to be independent, what we want, what we like, what we're good at, how to have relationships, how to meet responsibilities, and on and on. So if this process is disrupted during these critical years, there's all that learning that just hasn't happened. So if somebody at 28 or 32 or 40 starts to think about what do I want to do, or let me go try to do things, chances are that people don't have a good sense of what it is they want or what they can do, or may try it and find out they don't know how to do it because they've never had the opportunity to learn. It's not that people don't have the innate ability to do it. It's simply that they haven't had the experience to learn. I often will joke with people, sorry, I just wasn't there the day they handed out that book. I missed that class. And I say it as a joke, but in many ways it's really true for a lot of us, that there are just critical areas of learning that we bypassed because we were dealing with other things in our lives. And so what we find is that we learn them now. And that's the great side of this. That's what we're going to talk about, is how do we begin to really separate out things that we may have just associated with our illness, or even worse, with sort of a flaw within ourselves, and really just start to see that, these are just opportunities we never had to learn this stuff, and by goodness, we can learn them now. And that's what a lot of this unit is going to be all about. Within psych rehab, we use this little formula, which I love. It's called SNS equals SNS, and that stands for skills and supports equals success and satisfaction, or skills and supports can enhance success and satisfaction. And I'm going to talk about each of the 4 of these and then see how we put this together to be really useful in the way that we support people as we provide peer support to people around work. Let's look at the second half of this little equation first. So we see that we have both success and satisfaction here. And these are words that in our daily life we use pretty interchangeably. But we want to really break these down into two specific parts. And success is living up to the expectation of the environment as the environment defines it. So if we think about going into work, right, going into a job, the success piece that we're thinking about is, what does that employer expect of me? And sort of living up to those expectations. So it's measured from those expectations that the job has. But there's another piece that's equally important, which is success. And that's living up to my own expectations, my own needs to feel fulfilled and happy in this setting that I'm going to, in this work environment, or in the work environment that I'm in currently. To make sure that I'm satisfied as well as successful. And we can be one without the other. You may know people or have had experiences in your own life when you were very successful in a work job, in a position, but not very satisfied. There's also times when we can be very satisfied. We really like it there, but we're not doing very well there. So those are two separate things that we want to think about. We're going to shift over to the other side of the equation now, and one of those is supports. And when we think about supports, we think about people, places, things, and activities that support us to be successful on the job or support us to be satisfied on the job, but they don't have to be in the job. So there may be a lot of people that can help us be successful or satisfied in work. It might be people from maybe our spouse or our peer support or a friend. There's all sorts of people that can ultimately have an impact on our success or our satisfaction in work. Then, of course, there are people within work, maybe my boss or my supervisor, right? Places that support us might be, I always think of the coffee shop that I stop at my way to work. That is a place that helps me be much more successful and satisfied in my work, right? It might be a park down the street where you take a break at lunch. That might help somebody be more successful or more satisfied in their work. Then we think about the things that will help in that area, in those areas. So things like certainly maybe computers or cars to get to work, or trains, buses, having a phone, a cell phone, all sorts of things that can help us be successful and satisfied. It might be my lunch that I brought from home, because I feel more satisfied when I have the lunch I've prepared. Anything like that would fall into that category. And then activities that, again, help us feel satisfied or be successful. So this might be things from, meeting with my supervisor once a month. It might be doing exercises in the morning before I go to work. Anything like that. So these are the supports, the kind of supports that we think of. And the last one, which we're going to spend a lot more time on, is skills. And so I'm going to just sort of quickly go through what we think of in sort of the formal way of what skills are. But I don't expect you to really sort of figure out, look at each piece of this in depth. But just to let you know, when we think about skills, it's in a rather specific way and not in just sort of the general way. So skills are first and foremost, and this is a really important part of skills, they're actions. They're things that we do. So being patient wouldn't be a skill because it's sort of a state of being, right? But refraining from responding might be a way that we show that we're being patient, things like this. So it's actual actions that we do. It's, initiating conversations, asking questions, responding to feedback, navigating systems. All of these are actions. You can hear that. And skills are first and foremost actions. there are also things that are observable. And what we mean by that is because they're an action, you can sort of see a person doing it, right? And so, if we think about responding to feedback, we can sort of see a person saying things back to the person, or if we say asking for help, we can clearly see somebody doing that. They might be things that we sort of do in our heads, so adding a list of numbers, that would be sort of a mental action that we do. So all of those would be sort of skills. Great thing about skills is that they can be learned or taught. And this is a key thing that we're going to talk about in our role of peer support, is how can we not so much teach people, but how can we sort of brainstorm with people, well, what would it take to do this? What are the pieces of it? What is it made up of? Right? Really just sort of supporting people from that place of experience to think through sort of the parts of something. And these skills sort of link together, and we'll talk more about that, to build something bigger. And they're measurable. And what that really means is that we can see ourselves getting better at it. We can achieve a proficiency at skills over time. So that's sort of the general overview of what sort of the formal definition of what skills are. But let's look at it in a more concrete way. So I really think about skills, and you can see the list there is there again of what they are. But what I really think about is that skills are just like little Lego pieces. And Legos are these great things that you sort of put them together in all these different ways, and depending on which way you put them together, you come out with all these different things. It can be, a little square little thing like a couch you might make, or I've seen my nephew make like these huge buildings and rockets and all of these things out of Legos. And each one piece, when you look at it, looks pretty small and, not all that significant. It's just this little thing, a Lego. But when you look at the big thing, like this rocket, right? You take one Lego out of that, man, and the whole thing's going to fall apart. That really is the whole idea of skills. It's breaking down things that we do all the time and that we think about in sort of larger, general, vague terms. And it's bringing it down, cutting it down so that we get to that one Lego piece. What Lego pieces go into putting it together? I'll give you an example. Time management is something that comes up a lot in different kinds of jobs, right? Or in school, right? You gotta have time management skills. So if I don't have time management skills and I've got to sort of figure them out on my own, I say, time management, managing the time. So how do I manage time? Do I tell time to stop? What do I do, right? It doesn't really give me much direction. So let's begin to break it down into the little Legos that might go into time management. So for me to manage time, first of all, I need to know what I got to do, right? So maybe I might start with identifying the tasks I need to do, right? So that's a good place to start, right? And then what I need to do is sort of figure out, well, I've got these, but are some of them more important than others? So maybe prioritizing my tasks might be another Lego that sort of goes into this bigger picture of time management. And once I've prioritized my tasks, I probably need to estimate how much time each one is going to take, because if I don't know how long it's going to take, it's going to be really hard to sort of figure out how to manage my time. So estimating the time is one of those Legos. It's one of those skills that I need to have in this larger picture. And then scheduling the tasks once I've sort of identified them and prioritized them and estimated the time. Another Lego piece would be scheduling the tasks. And then one of my favorites, because it's one that I often forget about, is adhering to the schedule, right? So once we've sort of done all the footwork for here, we've got to then pay attention to what we've done. And so that's another Lego that's just as important as the other ones. And we see in this that if somebody, for example, was having difficulty with managing time, we might go through these with the person and say, let's break these down into the smaller pieces. We break it down in that we sit down with the person and, well, what do you think about these pieces? And I might look at the list if I were working with you and say, well, I'm pretty good at identifying tasks that have to be done. I'm really good at prioritizing the tasks. Oh, estimating time, that's not such a good one for me. Scheduling tasks, no problem. Adhering, yeah, that's another one, not so good. So you see, we're starting with places of strength in the first place. I've got 3 out of 5 already down. Before we even start, I'm working from a place of strength. I've got 3 out of 5. And that's the great thing, is that it's really just this idea of breaking it down. And again, coming back to that idea of making the implicit explicit. Taking what we may just think is clear and making sure it's clear, right? So taking vague and making it very concrete and putting it out there. And as peer supports, this is a great place that we can support people to break things down. So let me give you an example of what this looks like in action and how this can really be helpful. And I'm going to go back to the story that I told you earlier, an example from my own experience. When I was in my master's program, and I had gotten to this place, I had been in school for a year, and I got to this place of being totally fried and, crying in the bathroom half the time and wondering what did this mean, and all my warning bells are going off. And part of me is thinking this is the beginning of the end. But instead of sort of going that route, I sat down with people at the center that I worked with and that I, at this point, I had known them for about 1.5 years at this point and developed really good relationships. And we sat down and we, instead of saying, oh, what are your symptoms and, should you go to your psychopharm? It was a whole different conversation. And instead the conversation was, well, what are some of the skills and supports, that help you be successful and satisfied in what you're doing? And so I sort of looked over and I looked at, first of all, what am I doing? Okay, so I'm going to school. And school also is an 8-hour internship that's part of it. And so as part of my scholarship, I'm also working 20 hours that I have to do for that. And I'm still doing my course at the center. And ding, 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 bells are starting to go off. So what do I need to be successful and satisfied in my school program? Right? Well, I need to be able to balance work and play and recognizing what some of my needs are and prioritizing my tasks. We see some familiar ones here. Estimating the times that tasks are going to take, recognizing my own limits. And then 2 big ones came out of this. And in between there were a lot of ones that I really was good at, and those were all on the list as well. So things like asking for help. Wasn't too good at that one at that point. And refusing requests, that was a big one. So not only did I sort of have all these jobs, but then on top of my jobs, like in my 20-hour job that I had as part of my scholarship, there would be projects that would be sort of added in. And so those 20 hours would often go to 30 hours or 40 hours. So here I am, full-time school, internship that often grew into more hours, scholarship requirements of 20 hours that often grew into 30 and 40. No wonder why I was feeling fried, right? It was about really skills that I wasn't able to really utilize very strongly at that point. But by just identifying these, I could also begin to learn them. And it was a wonderful experience for me because I found that it reframed the whole experience. Because we had left illness, we weren't talking illness, we weren't talking symptoms. We were simply talking about skills. what skills do you have? Let's look at the skills you have and what skills will be helpful that aren't as strong yet. And that yet was always part of it. Which ones aren't as strong yet? And so I made choices based on this list. It was really clear what I needed to do after a little bit of exploration. And I did let the scholarship go, and that took that big 20-hour requirement that grew to 30 and 40 hours out of the picture. And it made a total difference. It changed how I felt. It changed how I was able to do my other things. It helped me learn some of these other skills along the line, and over time, it helped me to graduate. It was a fabulous thing. And so simply by reframing things from illness to skills, what do you need to do? How can you do it? And how can I support you to think through what the steps are? Coming up with this list of skills that we came up with was probably a half-hour discussion with my supervisor. That was it, half hour. What do you need to be successful and satisfied in what you're doing? It was really clear really soon just by looking at it in that mindset. And so this is a place that no matter where somebody is in the process, we can really help them with. So the example that I gave you of me was I was already in a setting. And in my case, the keeping was really questionable. Could I keep this, right? But keeping is something that we don't have to wait until somebody is in a place. We can also look at keeping as people are planning to go somewhere. We often sort of approach the future from the place of the idea that, sorry Chris, I gotta stop for a minute, I just had a brain thing. Okay, I'm gonna take it back to, as I say, something like the example that I used for myself was keeping something that I already had. All right, mind frame, here we go. So the example that I used from my own experience is one where I was already in a setting. I was in school, and I needed to keep that, right? It was really questionable whether or not I'd be able to keep that for me at that point. But we don't always have to wait until someone is in a place before we start to think about keeping. Often, especially in mental health services, we've often worked in the Peter Principle, which is something that actually comes out of the business world. But the Peter Principle says that people rise to the level of their incompetence. And what that really is about is if you're successful in one job in a business, then you get promoted. And the promotion has nothing to do with your known skills and ability to do what you're going to. It's about what your success at the level that you were at. So you get moved up, and you're sort of in a sink or swim place. And if you swim, you stay there for a while and you get promoted again. And this just keeps going on as long as you can swim, and you go up and up until the place where you sink. And then you get kicked out, right? So because you can no longer function at that level, you've exceeded your level of competence. You're now at your level of incompetence, and out you go. We often do that in services as well, that we say, wow, somebody's doing really well here, so that means they can go to the next level. Instead of saying, where are they going, and how can we support people to think about where they're going and what they might need to be successful and satisfied there. And this is the idea of working around keeping before somebody even goes. So if we go back and think about our friend Jose, we know that Jose is going to school in about 6 months. And so Jose is working with his peer support specialist to begin to think about what skills do I need and what supports do I need to be successful and satisfied in my school setting. And here's just a very partial list of the kind of things that he might come up with. But things like skills of focusing in class and scheduling homework, negotiating with professors, or maybe selecting classes, choosing courses. Okay, that ended up being two ways of saying the same thing, but that would be a skill. Initiating conversations with my classmates might be another one. Selecting material to study as he's getting ready for exams. All of these different skills will be important for him to be successful and satisfied there. And so he could look at the list and begin to say, okay, focusing in class, I'm really good at sitting down and focusing on things. Scheduling at homework, I think I'll do okay with that. Negotiating with professors, yeah, I tend to have a hard time sort of putting out my own needs. Selecting classes, I think that'll be fine. That'll probably be pretty much set for me in the school anyway. Initiating conversations with my classmates, I think that'll be okay once I get comfortable in the room. So you can see we've gone through a long list, and out of those, many of those have come out strengths. One, I might want to work on that. As we look at supports, what will I need? I'll need books, computer, training dogs, my RAP plan, peer support, tuition. And here, instead of saying, is this a skill that I'm strong at this point, it might be a support instead is, do I have these yet? And if not, this would be a good time to maybe find out about getting them. So we see that keeping can be started very early in the process. In fact, keeping can be started the minute we choose. Once we've chosen where we're going, then we can start thinking about keeping. What do I need to be able to do? What do I need to have to be successful and satisfied where I'm going? And the great thing, as I've said a couple of times, but I want to reiterate, the great thing about this, going from this approach, whether or not we can, identify skills in their purest form, that doesn't matter. It's really just breaking it down to manageable levels, right? Thinking about what kind of things do I have to do in a sort of micro level really just makes things so much more manageable, doable, and learnable, right? I can learn to do these things. If I'm not going to school for 6 months, I have time. And so this really can open the door to many things for people. And this, again, is something that probably most employment support centers are not going to offer people, but that we can as peer supporters. We've covered a lot in the last 7 units. We started way back with the whole place of feeling ready to go, and how do we support people in that place of looking at and addressing those areas of I can't, and I know I can't, and I know that I can't work because of my benefits, all of that stuff. And then we went into the process of choosing and thinking, what kind of services can we offer to people? What kind of support can we offer at that early stage? And a lot of the support, as we think about choosing, is in consort. This is where we start to work in consort with other employment services that may be out there. But we can begin to brainstorm things like people's preferences, what their experiences have been, maybe begin to tap into dreams. What would you really like it to look like? What are you hoping for out of moving into the work world? Is it to, really forge a new career path, or is it to get money for other purposes? Really exploring all of those important considerations as people go in and choose which direction they're going to go. We then went on and really talked about the getting process and the vital role of knowing about benefits and disclosure as people go out and start to get into actual work settings. And then here we talked about in keeping skills and supports. But certainly we spent the bulk of our time back at those places of feeling ready to go, overcoming those negative self-messages that we have, because these are some of the most vital places that peer support can really change people's lives, and these are things that no one else is out there doing. We saw those terrible statistics that come out of the gold standards of employment supports, and it's a very sad picture to see that people are going into work and settling for dead-end jobs. And so if we can really impact people and help light that flame of belief in themselves, belief in a future, belief in true occupational recovery, it will be a contribution that is really invaluable. I often think of what Pat Deegan talks about in just general recovery, of that fragile flicker of hope, and we want to be igniting that same fragile flicker around occupational recovery, and then fanning those flames and helping those flames get stronger and stronger. And this will actually wrap up our course on supporting competitive employment. I hope that you have found the course helpful. Most importantly, I hope that you've found that you're getting excited about supporting people in this new area of peer support. I can tell you I've been incredibly privileged to do this work and have loved supporting people in this area. I hope that you find the same sense of personal fulfillment from igniting that belief in true and meaningful occupational recovery for people who have been so marginalized for so long. I wish you all the best as you take on this new venture, and remember always that recovery is real, and that means occupational recovery as well. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.